So, The Acolyte.
Star Wars returns, and it's certified fresh.
Do you remember when shows would rely on reputable media outlets like The Guardian, The New York Times, The Telegraph to sell them with such things as 5 stars, unmissable, riveting, edge of your seat, all of the sort of cliche statements that you would find basically giving you a 1 or 2 word review of how good an episode was. Instead, Disney now relies on Rotten Tomatoes to sell its shit. And those well-known outlets such as Laney Gossip, Espinoff, Them Dot. I mean, this one, finally, the world of Star Wars actually feels expansive. The Acolyte is as shallow as a tinker's bath. Now, most of these outlets won't mean anything to anyone. No one's ever heard of them. And unless you went plumbing the depths of the internet, you would never come across them. It's these kinds of outlets which are giving Disney the fresh reviews. But even if you look at them, the vast majority of them are like 3s out of 5, which is hardly setting the world alight. That said, we know about how corrupt reviews are, particularly on sites like Rotten Tomatoes, where critics are paid in order to give a positive review. So these days, I wouldn't really take anything that a critic said for granted. And I'd be more inclined to look at the audience reviews. Unless, of course, it's someone I've heard of and who might actually have a track record somewhat resembling reality. Now, of course, if we specifically look at the audience scores from over 25,000 reviews, they are definitely in the toilet. 14% approval. And I think that Disney would be safe with a score of 14% to advertise that The Acolyte, as well as Star Wars, is certifiably dead. Now, there is some hoo-ha about review bombing and all of that sort of stuff from content creators on YouTube to just the general public going on to Rotten Tomatoes and basically just giving it a 1 star. It's all crap. It's the same spiel that these production companies come out with whenever their show is shit and people tell them that it's shit. The reality is that no one with standards thinks this show is good. Unless, of course, you're the Mirror, which manages to find a few shills still clinging to the franchise and try to use them as evidence that The Acolyte and Star Wars is saved. But what else would you expect from the usual access media? And I certainly would never describe The Acolyte in any part as being fucking amazing. Now, in their defense, The Acolyte Episode 5 does seem to be a turning point. Perhaps. I mean, in terms of a quality scale, with Disney Star Wars, we are so far beneath the bottom of the barrel that we're currently dining in hell. And this is just a sick form of torture to watch a once beloved franchise be murdered time and time again. But, and it is a very tenuous but, we do seem to have moved up ever so slightly in terms of quality. The same way that a value of a share might do a slight upturn before crashing even further, which is exactly what outcome I expect in the next episode. Now, someone, somewhere, might think that such an expectation is unfair. I don't. The reason for that is the improvement in this episode has more to do with what Disney has done poorly with Star Wars, rather than anything it's managed to do well. The producers of the series came out and said that there was a lightsaber sequence that would rival those of the prequels. And if length is anything to be lauded, then it would be hard to argue that at 21 minutes of fight sequences, that would not be impressive. However, The problem is what they actually managed to achieve within that 21 minutes, and how the entire fight plays out. Now, I'm not disputing that this is the best choreographed lightsaber duel within Disney Star Wars. But as I alluded to previously, it's more because of what they have done before has been utterly shocking, rather than this episode being exceptional. And to compare the choreography in this episode to that of the prequels is like comparing dog food to a ribeye steak. The actual content of this episode, other than the fight sequence, is non-existent. And even throughout that, you can't help but get disillusioned from what is going on around you because of the complete lack of any sense. For example, the Sith uses his Force powers liberally. The Jedi don't use them at all. A Padawan is a better saber duelist than any of the Jedi Knights. Clearly it's because she's female, and the Force is female, because let's face it, it's Disney, and they advertise it as such. But then there's the nonsensical nature of the plot armor. People who clearly could easily be killed aren't. Or people who could easily be dispatched aren't dispatched until later in the episode because arbitrarily they need to do something further on before they die. There's even a point when the antagonist, the Sith, should clearly be killed, but they let him live because he's unarmed. He's got Force powers. Anyone with Force powers is never unarmed. Characters who ran in one direction suddenly end up teleporting for plot reasons, what I am now going to refer to as teleplotting, to someone who ran in a completely different direction. And then characters' motives seem to change faster than Mrs. Doubtfire at a fancy restaurant, to the point where the only logical assumption is that there's some sort of contagious mental illness. All of this, realistically, is immersion breaking. And because of the lack of any real content other than swooshy glow sticks, it's like trying to immerse yourself inside a thimble. Now I know what you're thinking. You said that this was an improvement, and you've just literally shit all over it. You're right. That's evidence of just how bad this show has been so far. But it's also the very fact that there is no real substance in this episode, other than the fight sequence. There's a significant lack of anything which moves the plot forward, and almost a complete lack of any meaningful dialogue. And all of that makes this episode better. And that is specifically down to how bad the writing is, in that it's comparable to what a child or a young teenager would be able to produce. So yes, this is better, but only because it lacks many of the meaningful parts of a story. There is less for the writers to actually fail at. And it's genuinely a sad day where you can say that something is better for lacking these points because of how bad these points have been executed in previous episodes. But with that, let's take a look at the episode. So, Osha wakes up having been thrown through the forest once again, with absolutely zero scratches, bumps, grazes, breaks, or anything. I mean, I don't know why anyone's really surprised at that. She did crash into a planet and didn't have a single scratch. So she wanders back towards the action, and she trips. And lo and behold, there's a dead Jedi. Now, my first thought, why is he dead there? Everyone got catapulted backwards by the Force push. You can see the pattern in the ground. The problem is that the pattern is nonsensical, because they weren't dragged along the ground. It would look more like ground zero of an explosion where everything was blown outwards. And if that's the case, they all got blown back before he killed any of them, then why aren't they all fighting here? Why is this guy dead here? It doesn't make sense. Now, the problem here is that you just can't really make out anything of actually what is happening. The trees obscure a significant proportion of the action, and I just can't help but think that that might actually be deliberate. Just from what we've seen there, we can see him walk past opponents that either never try to strike him in the back, or they take a stupidly convenient amount of time to come back into the action. And this can only be because of Smiler's plot armor. And I do feel that having the trees there helped hide the pauses and the cues for those same combatants to come back into the fight. But from what we can see in this scene, it makes the Jedi Knights look incompetent with their lightsabers. And then we have magic helmet and gauntlets that allow him to headbutt and punch lightsabers. Now, this is based on canon in the books. It existed in Legends, so this is not a Disney creation, before it was reintroduced in, I think, the Disney universe in about 2015-2016. Now, personally, I thought it was stupid when they introduced this in the first instance, let alone try to reintroduce it now. Why, you might ask? The mineral that these are made out of is called cortosis, and it's supposed to be exceedingly rare. But this guy, who is a nobody, found enough to make a helmet and gauntlets. Now, what happens if we take this to the extreme? How about you just make a full suit of armor and you're effectively invincible versus Jedi in lightsaber combat? That's why it's stupid. Because at the height of the Republic, or the height of the Empire, you could just requisition every piece of cortosis that exists in the entire universe and do exactly that. And make something which is lightsaber immune. But it's not just lightsaber immune. In theory, it should block blaster bolts, like Beskar does. So it's just a stupid material. That if you take it to a logical conclusion, because if I was wanting to hunt and kill Jedi, and I was thinking, how can I do this safely, I'd make a suit of armor which would allow me to do it. Now, again, with the convenience of the plot and the way that things happen, for some reason, Smiler pulls his lightsaber back just to nick his leg, rather than cutting his entire leg off. Obviously, it's Disney Star Wars, so they can't show you actually removing a limb or decapitating someone. But then even worse, shortly after this, the other two Jedi are still sat there with flickering lightsabers waiting for them to restart. He has absolutely tons of time to kill Jord, but doesn't. And why? It's either plot armor, or it's just plain retardation. It's clearly both. And this is what I mean. One of the guys with the yellow lightsaber who moved past the Sith was off screen for almost 4 to 5 seconds, despite the fact that he would then have just turned and come back, specifically for the Sith, to use his force powers and drag him onto the lightsaber. It's almost like it's advertised choreography, but it's just bad choreography. Because the timing and the cue is not how a fight would actually happen. All the time where he's bobbing and weaving in between these Jedi, the Jedi would turn and swipe behind them. And it would take the space of a second to do so. It doesn't make sense. But with all that, this does raise an interesting point. I haven't seen any Jedi so far using any Force powers on the Sith. And there's absolutely no reason as to why they aren't. So she shoots him, but it does nothing apart from distract him. But at no point is it actually explained why it does nothing to him. Is it the armor? But it hit him where the armor is not. So, again? Why? And what actually bugs me more about this is, again, that shot did nothing to him. So he could have just killed Jord and then turned his attention to Osha. Instead, he goes straight for Osha. It's mentally incoherent. And this... It's just such bad writing. It just boils my piss. We already know that the forest is full of moth things that will come out at night, and they are attracted to light. It's night, so let's just run around shining a light. Why isn't she getting killed? It's just convenience. It's like they've got selective memory, and they think that their entire audience also has selective memory. So that when it is needed for the plot, we will remember it. When it runs completely contrary to the plot, they expect us to forget it. So he threw his lightsaber rather than just force pulling her. And then he clearly force pulls his lightsaber back, otherwise it could have ended up anywhere. So why didn't he just force pull her in the first place? Oh. Who writes this utter shit? The dialogue is just woeful. But probably more annoying is she ran away from Jord when Jord told her to. But then Jord ends up coming from behind her despite being injured and therefore shouldn't be able to move quicker than her. They just can't make this make sense. And I can't make sense of it. I'm guessing he just teleplotted there so that the plot can move forward, so he can be there for the important parts where he's needed. Why can't they just make it make sense? It's not hard.
You carry a Jedi weapon.
Hang on. Is this guy fucking retarded? Or does no one know about the Sith? Bad enough that Ki-Adi-Mundi has been shown to be a liar, even though he shouldn't actually be alive in this series. But this guy doesn't even know about Jedi history, because the Sith carry lightsabers as well. And this whole fight scene between the Padawan and May just doesn't make sense at all. Now, they know that May is trained in the Force and that she is an assassin, and yet instead of fighting her properly, the Padawan endlessly tries to arrest her, despite the fact that May is armed, and at no point the Padawan decides to take the lightsaber, which is on her belt for the entire fight, and use that to subdue or even kill May as being an assassin. The way that this show is written is just terrible, because why is even May even trying to fight the Padawan anyways? She's supposed to have approached the Jedi in order to give herself up so that she can be with Osha. How is anyone supposed to know what anyone's motives are in this show? Because they change every 5 minutes.
Show your face.
And let you read my thoughts.
Hang on, so the helmet masks his thoughts? So he's basically Magneto in the Star Wars universe? And again, the Sith had the upper hand there, but he again chooses not to kill and then sods off somewhere else to follow whatever quarry is the quarry of that moment. I'm starting to think that he just doesn't finish anything. What's worse about this episode is there's several characters he could have killed now, very easily. And however this episode ends will only end that way because it's obviously been written to end that way. Because everyone's just surviving in order to do something later on in the episode or later on in the series. There's no rational reason why these people wouldn't be dead. Because if you had the chance to dispatch your quarry, you would.
What is he, Jord?
I don't know.
I mean, honestly, why would you expect Jord to know? He's an absolute moron. Also, they're running through the forest with their lightsabers out and on. Where are the moth things that were shown in the previous episode to be attracted to any light source? And why aren't they being attacked, or at least bothered by the moths? So the Padawan finally cuffs May, but she does actually deserve to die, because she's an absolute idiot. I still don't understand why at no point in this fight she pulls out her lightsaber. Especially when she's being attacked by someone who's armed, so it's not like it's an honor thing or anything like that. It's just needless. So now she finally ignites the saber, because the Siths come with a weapon, but May had a weapon. I just don't get this writing. Couple of issues. Why is a Padawan better in a lightsaber duel than any of the Jedi Knights that he just consistently dicked on? And if using 2 lightsabers is better than using only one, and you're better at doing it, why wouldn't you just always use 2 lightsabers? She had both, so I don't understand why she wouldn't have chosen that option to begin with, given that she was completely useless one saber versus one saber, but is now apparently got the upper hand versus the Sith. And so at the end of that, she's back down to 1 lightsaber, and he could have killed her. So that's Jord, Master Sol, and the Padawan, all of which who could have been killed very easily, but the Sith decided that he would teleplot to his next fight. Why? Just continuing the run around the forest, lights everywhere, still no moths. I give in.
Turn off your saber. The light attracts them.
Attracts what?
So then Osha remembers that there's the moth thingies and that they're dangerous, but Jord doesn't? It was like literally half an hour ago when you got attacked here. You absolute fuckwit. How can you forget this? And this is something that it feels like it's manufactured how we should approach Jord. Jord is supposed to be just an idiot. The idiot of the show. If he doesn't die, he genuinely deserves to. That was quite literally always going to happen that way. As soon as she got cuffed, she was going to get a lightsaber cutting through her cuffs. And this is just too stupid now. There's convenient things that would happen, but the entire episode is just filled with convenience. I've used the word many times before. This is just contrived. Beyond belief. How would everyone come to this spot at the exact moment that the Sith was going to kill May? It's just impossibly implausible. It defies any logic, particularly when everyone's coming from different directions. And the only logical reason that we can give to it is it's written that way. You know what it is? It sounds stupid, but the entire episode actually feels scripted. Everything that happens feels like it's happening mechanically rather than organically. It's terrible.
We have to go back. He's gonna kill them. He's gonna kill them all.
Like, what the absolute fuck? This is actually splitting my head in half. I can't make sense of this show. Firstly, Jord is like such a cuck. But why does he change his motivation? Why does he change his mind? They're clearly going to go back. But the problem is that he was tasked with getting her out of there. More importantly than that, wouldn't telling the Jedi what was going down and that there was this dark force user or whatever the hell he's gonna call him because he doesn't know about the Sith, that there was one here so that the Jedi could send everyone basically to try to kill him. He has bigger fish to fry than going back to save his mates. But even the rationale of him going back to save his mates makes no sense because he left them full well knowing that they were going to die. When he left, most of them had already been killed. And there's nothing that has changed from that situation to this situation that would make it a plausible reason for him to return to save his friends. It doesn't make sense. So hang on, Master Sol is actually better fighting hand to hand than he is with a lightsaber. You know what it is? I didn't actually see that happening. I didn't think it was possible for Disney, Star Wars, Lucasfilm, whatever you want to say, to actually kill a female character. I mean, she fared better than everyone else, but it is still very surprising, particularly with the whole mantra that the Force is female, that the most competent female Force user in the series so far got killed. You know, this could be funny if it wasn't actually just so sad. The person that a 5-year-old would have thought was the Sith, by how they'd telegraphed it in neon lights all the way through the series up until this point, turned out to actually be the Sith. Do you remember how they had, posited this whole series as being a thriller, a mystery? Do they seriously think that these twists, or lack of twists, are actually clever? Or that anyone thought that this was mysterious to begin with? 'Cause it's not. It's just crap. This also now presents a bit of an logical inconsistency between what we currently know about the Force and what they're positing here. Because it used to be that the Force would only work on the weak-willed for reading their minds. And all you'd leak is emotions, or potentially images of how you were feeling. But if he feels the need to wear the helmet because it hides his thoughts, he's clearly a fully trained Sith, because he has better mastery of Force powers, and he's better in combat than any of these Jedi. He shouldn't be weak-willed. And as such, that would logically mean that the Jedi can read information from anyone's mind now. Now, there is a need within Disney and within Lucasfilm to extend the boundaries of what is possible with the Force. We've seen it all the way through Disney's tenure of owning Lucasfilm and owning Star Wars, in that there's almost like a power creep in that Force powers need to get bigger and better. But whenever they do this, it makes no sense with what has come before. The problem that this raises is either he is weak-willed, and the Jedi can read information from him, and he's concerned about that, or he's not weak-willed, and the Jedi can now read information from anyone. Both of these amount to the same issue, in that if this is a concern, and he's concerned about them reading stuff from him, then why didn't the Jedi catch him earlier in the series when they question him with regards to the death of the suicidal Jedi, and he isn't wearing his helmet? Once again, we've got an 8-episode series where this could have been nipped in the bud at episode 2. It could have been nipped in the bud here, and that's just picking 2 parts, because the Sith could have killed everyone by now, and in episode 2 he could have been caught by the Jedi, and there's probably at least another 4 or 5 places where this could end. And yet, we're supposed to believe that there's another 3 episodes. Why is there another 3 episodes? Is it because everyone's retarded? Because that's what it feels like. That's how this show is written.
Was that its name?
Well, he did kill her, but at least he didn't offend its pronouns. If he can force pull like that, Why didn't you just do it earlier in the episode with Osha? The decisions that they've scripted him to make just feel more and more like they're to justify the length of the show. And I'll be honest, at this point, I don't think there's anything that they can do to fix this. This whole episode has so little content or substance in it. The content and substance it does have is still crap. So what's going to happen when we move to the next episode? Because I think that this episode's got pretty much the entirety of the action in. We're going to end up with 2 filler episodes and then action again at the end. So as soon as we get back to relying more on their writing, their motivations, their story, their plot, things are just going to go straight back to absolute crap. Because the motivations of the characters in here and what they are doing and why don't make sense.
You really didn't know it was me. Not even deep down?
Of course you didn't, because everyone in this show's mentally deficient.
What are you?
The Jedi like you might call me Sith.
So there you've got it. He's just confirmed that he's Sith. And the only way that they can now make this make sense with the wider universe, because obviously they see canon as more of a guideline rather than a story. Because, of course, they see canon as a guideline rather than the actual building blocks of the overarching story and the universe. The only way that this now can make sense is if the Jedi cover all of this up, from the High Council, Master Yoda, and that Ki-Adi-Mundi is basically a complete liar. And ultimately, then, it is the Jedi which allowed the Sith to grow and fester. And in many ways, even encouraged it to grow by not making all of the Jedi aware that the Sith was still a thing. So what we all feared was that Disney was going to do a switcheroo with regards to the ethics or morality of the universe and make the Jedi seem morally reprehensible. But also, they're making the Jedi seem incompetent.
What do you want?
Freedom.
The freedom to kill everyone I want and train more to do the same. Oh, no. I've just had a horrible thought. So this guy was posing as the apothecary. Basically, he knows poisons and potentially diseases. Plagues are diseases. Are they going to make this guy Darth Plagueis? I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if that's how the writers think about this sort of stuff, because they're idiots. But I'm now trying to think like I think they would think, and I now have a horrible feeling that they're going to say that this guy's Darth Plagueis.
You. Surprise.
And so dies Jord, and nobody cared.
The Jedi do not attack the unarmed.
Here's just some more nonsensical plot convenience, contrivance, whatever the hell you want to call it. Why wouldn't you kill the Sith? Whether he's unarmed or not. He's a Sith. They're evil. They exist to dominate everyone. But more so, he's a Force user. And the Force can be used as a weapon. And from what we've seen, he's a better Force user than any of you. So, by that logic, he's never unarmed, and therefore always a threat. So you should kill him. Mace Windu would have killed the Emperor had Anakin not intervened, and Saul should kill this guy. No questions asked. But whatever story they've written, the Sith needs to survive because it's only episode 5. But it's making me feel like perhaps those two have history. Because he seems to know exactly what Saul did when Osha and May were kids.
I love you, Ben.
So she sticks them with the light to make the moths attack, because obviously now she's seen that they're in the area. What I don't understand is why they didn't attack any of them when they had their lightsabers out before this. It's not like they've moved enormous distances or anything like that. And one of them attacked Sol when Sol had his lightsaber out in the previous episode. So it doesn't stack up logically. If they're attracted to light, they should be coming for any light source. And it shouldn't just be for the purposes of the plot. There's just no continuity. So the moths then take him away because, well, plot. Moths didn't take anyone else away, but obviously the story needs him to be gone for now, so the next things can happen, whatever they are. So, I'm starting to get sick of this, so I guess I'll just quickly summarise this part. The evil twin stuns the Jedi, they have a heart-to-heart, blah blah blah. Basically, it makes it sound like each of them have different points of view regarding what happened when they were kids. So I won't be surprised if, or rather when, we get another flashback sequence showing a different point of view of events and painting the Jedi as the bad guys, because I think everyone knows that this is the way that this is going to get pushed, because Disney just can't help but subvert any established structure. So they have a bit of an argy-bargy. May force pushes Osha, knocking her clean out. I actually find this moderately interesting because May has used more force powers in this episode than pretty much all of the Jedi combined. She then cuts her hair in one swipe, makes herself look identical to her sister, because obviously it's incredibly convenient that they essentially have the same hairstyle in all but length. The stupid thing here is, however, that the evil twin has a tattoo on her head. So I'm guessing it's going to be incredibly convenient that her hair hides it, and it would never move, ever, to advertise the tattoo on the forehead. This is just shit. And then they switch places because Disney has to put every single twin trope that exists into this show. Probably because their writers are creatively bankrupt. Although to be bankrupt, you had to have something to begin with, which they don't have any ability at all, as far as I can tell.
She's gone. We must get to the ship here. Let me help you.
And for a moment there, it looked like Sol knew something was up. The only way to redeem Sol here is if he knows about this and is just playing along. But I think that that's an enormous long shot at this point. Because whether it's intentional or by accident, the writers are making all of the Jedi look like absolute retards. I think what's more disturbing about this is apparently the brightest person in this show is the Bloodhound Rat thing. Because he knows that something's amiss. And so completes the twin switcheroo. The difference, however, is I think the Sith guy knows that this is Osha. But that's the end of the episode. Another installment of trash from the Disney Corporation. And one of the things that keeps popping into my head as each episode passes is how the hell do we have so many episodes left? How the hell did this cost 180 million to make? Because I don't see those dollars in this show. But the single thing that I cannot get past is how can they call this a thriller? It's so bloody transparent what they're doing with the story. There's nothing to engage you, nothing to keep you on the edge of your seat. It's the antithesis to a thriller. But I don't really know. I just think it's utterly trash. What did you all think of the episode? Let me know in the comments below. If you've liked the episode, please give it a like and subscribe for future content. But with that, that's it for me, so that's it for you.